Hey folks, welcome to Weekend Box Scores Primary Waves Edition. Of course, please do review our disclosures at the end of this. All right, now the first thing I'd like to note, I added some covered call candidates this week. Now, covered call candidates, the SPY, the reason being is I think are two holds, but if it doesn't, then, and again, I'm going to go back to the 30-minute candle on the opening range on Monday. We close above that 30-minute, we get above that 30-minute candle, and it holds, then we're probably going to continue to the upside. So obviously, selling covered calls would not be necessary. However, we break below that 30-minute candle, we're probably going to flush for a few days. Now, we have FOMC coming up in the next couple of weeks. I think it's the 24th. So, actually, I might be wrong. It might be the 21st. So we have, let me check. Actually, it's the 19th through the 20th. So we should have that out on Wednesday this week. I think we run into it. That's just my thought. This, OpEx and quad witching is what it is. Like I described in Swing Trade Notes, we had a large call buyer, which might have affected the downside because of commercials having to cover. So the same thesis for Apple. Until we close below this 2, the count's really not broken. So, looking at, for insulation, you could sell this month's 190 calls or buy next week's puts at the money for Apple. As insulation, you could sell the 453 calls on the SPY or buy next week's puts at the money. The reason you want to be tighter on the SPY, because if it's going to go, you're going to make money anyways, because if it's going to flush, it'll go 2 dots. You don't really want to push that leverage too much there, whereas, I'm more comfortable giving us some room. We're up here at 190. We shouldn't get back above that. That way they should expire. I would think, just looking at where we are in the chart. Now, as far as Microsoft's concerned, short stop would be above this candle here, 340.86. The reason being is that pretty much is done. That B hasn't reset. C probably will reset down around the 8-day. So I think we have a little more downside on the Microsoft than we do Apple, at least at this look. So, maybe 342, 343, 345 range calls you could sell. Basically, I went to this candle on the off number, and that was my thought. But still, I think it's a core position. I think we should have something on with Microsoft, have something on with Apple, and have something on with the SPY where we are, because I think there's a greater likelihood that this cycle wave 3 is very accurate. And we got quite a little bit of upside here, as far as that look. All right. So IIPR, is a breakout, above the breakout line, counts are way the heck up there. Just the 200 days at 138 for where we are. That's a nice move, So we break out above that number. That would be huge. That's one of my favorite looks. KKR actually looks really good. Relative strength here. We're above the breakout line, target 77. Looking at Intel, we've held our own, even though we're breaking back down below the 23.6. So that target's maybe 41. And looking at Stag, it's held its own. We're back testing the breakout here at this point. We, didn't put in, nice base here. Our trend support is way the heck down here. So I don't think we back test that. Looks pretty solid, relative strength there as well. Now, Oxy is, testing the breakout line here. We popped our head above it, so maybe 73. Now, we could be here with Oxy for a while. If you look at the last time we were in a flat, it took 2 years for us to get out of that. So that was, an extended period of time. Just keep that in mind when you're in Oxy. Now, NTR, it looks like our bottom came in on our intermediate wave 2, so our weekly trigger is at 62.43. We're above that. So our breakout line is right here at the 8-day, so I think we're back on track there. I classified it as a new entry, but if you already were scaling in, just continue to scale in. Now SQM is a new entry, 58.72 is our low where our count is. Now our wave 5 is going to come in shallower. So, this is probably a bottoming pattern. Just keep in mind, you might want to leave a little room to scale in down at $50 if we do get a little bit of a lower count on that. Now, the one thing with SQM is that, there's some chatter on Chile, nationalizing the mines. And if that actually occurs, this could give us a little downside. So you want to definitely flag that news in your trade deck so you get that. Now, Tesla, I think we should be scaling back in here. Nice pop. Just a nice pop. As long as we open up above 270, I see no reason why we shouldn't continue. Shop, holding its own, not as euphoric as I'd like it. It is getting a little resistance right here, but looking at where we were, it's this support line, this low. That support is, we went into it and rejected price a little bit, but I still think we get up towards that 89 on that primary wave 3. Now PLD, it's flat, needs some volume, real short, but count suggests we'll get up to about 142. NFE, needs some volume too, flat still, as far as I'm concerned. However, it's constructive. We did not have a big drawdown on Friday like many other stocks. So that was a positive thing. Now, TDOC, we're going to put in a new primary wave setup just below where our original setup was. So it's going to come in like 21.15, right about where we are. And, hopefully that holds. Now, our difficulty here is, how long is this going to take? That really is the question here, because this has now become extended, almost like it's going to be a slow bleed. So we get too much below $20. I'm probably going to say trim, because then there's a potential that this is mound 1 and we're going to get a mound 2, and we potentially even could get a mound 3. So if this starts to become a slow bleed, it could push out to July 25, and I don't like that look. But just a heads up, as far as positioning, where the primary was right now, we should only have a quarter position on. So if it breaks below like 21, maybe you cut half of that off and wait and see where we land and go from there. So now, notable bearish looking. Now, a couple things here that I wanted to point out. Tupperware, maybe $1.15. Rocket Labs still looks like maybe $1.50. Spyware Global, maybe $3.50, and that was wave 3 to the downside. So we could have a little more downside there. AT&T looks pretty solid to about $13. AMD is really weak. Matter of fact, that's even chaseable short. Redfin is chaseable short, maybe $5. Came off pretty decent last week, maybe even $1. That's actually one of my highest convictions short, even though I did not put any short trades in here, because I really wanted everybody to focus on managing the current positions and hedging if that becomes necessary, versus adding new positions that you need to watch. But AMAT, maybe a 138. Kinder Morgan, maybe $13.54. Paramount, maybe $5. Disney, maybe 72. Planetaire is definitely in a downtrend, maybe the 8-day. We lose the 8-day, maybe about $3, $4 below we are, which is our next wave 3 down. Pfizer, maybe 32. So we do have some stocks that are weak, and we want to keep that in mind as, we're looking at our positions. And, I would not hesitate at all across the board. Okay. If you want to go look at your stocks, if we close below that 30-minute candle on the SPY at the money puts, you could even do Friday's puts, just a couple of them on any of the positions that you have that look weak. If we closed on the bottom of the candle, do an HCL bar on your chart. If it closed on the low side of the candle on last week's candle, right, you're probably going to see one more candle, which is going to be at least 50% lower. And all you're doing is just trying to put some premium in the moat if you're buying these puts. Now, also too, covered calls. However, I was very selective in the cover calls, because I don't want you to get on the wrong side of some of these trades and end up having the shares taken from you. I think covered calls has a very specific box we should stay in, and we have to have a very specific reason why, which is why I mentioned those. So let me just review that real quick, the covered calls, because I want to make sure that, it's something that I have not really done in the notes before. So the SPY, 453 calls are buy next week's puts. Apple, 190 calls are buy next week's puts at the money. Microsoft could sell this month's 342 to 345 calls or buy next week's puts at the money. Basically, duplicate that for Google and Amazon, because if we do turn over and we roll and we get a decent push lower, they're probably going to roll over as well. But I did not include them on the shorts. But I think at this point, these stocks should hold up. Last week, Amazon didn't care. Google didn't care. Tesla didn't care. Intel, little tick lower, but nothing crazy. KKR didn't care, and IPR didn't care. So that's sort of my thought. Great trading until next time, folks.